Hello, everybody. I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films. And that one, the title. Let me mute this. The title, "People Who Live Through Industry." Like, is it comparing and contrasting people that live in rural settings versus urban settings? I'm not sure. It might just be a hodgepodge of footage that they had that they kind of brought together and decided to show. I don't know. This doesn't come with notes. This was a film that came from the Mogul Brothers library, which ultimately was in the Oregon Archive in Pittsburgh, and we scanned it for them. So, let's see. What do we got next? This one is got sound and color, and is a little bit more self-explanatory. This is Korea, rich heritage, land of morning calm. Enjoy.
I am Lee Sang-jin. In the Western world, I would be known as Sang-jin Lee, but in Korea, my family name comes first, and it is most important to me. It says to me and to others that my family is directly descended from the ancient kings of the Yi dynasty. There are only about 200 family names in my country, so millions of families named Lee, but not all related to mine. There is a book in our family which records the names of family members going back some 800 years. We attach great importance to our family and to continuing the work left by our ancestors. Traditionally, we honor our ancestors through memorial rituals. We hope to inherit the spirit displayed by those ancestors. On these occasions, we share with them our best wine and food. This sharing reminds us that the past is part of our current lives.
This memorial ritual is not taking place in one of the modernized villages. It is one of certain communities that have been preserved as cultural villages. Here, customs centuries old continue almost unchanged. Most of the villagers are of one family or clan. On these formal occasions, the chief and elders meet in traditional costume to conduct village affairs. Family clans have a long tradition. In prehistoric times, all of Korea was occupied by separate tribal clans. More than 2,000 years ago, the land was organized into three kingdoms. One, the kingdom of Silla, dominated in 668 AD, uniting the Koreans as one people for the first time. Many artifacts have survived from these earlier periods. The belt worn by a Silla monarch, gold crowns, roof tiles, and endurable objects made with clay or stone. Silla was followed by the Koryo dynasty in 918 AD. One of the artistic glories of the Koryo period was in ceramics. Koryo Celadon pottery is considered to be without peer, its unmatchable glaze almost a lost art. Koryo was followed by the Yi dynasty, which lasted until the Japanese occupation of 1910. The palaces in Seoul were the capital of the Yi kingdom for 500 years. Despite their long history as a united people, the Korean heritage is a story of cultural survival under extreme difficulties. At various times, their land has been invaded by the Chinese and Manchus, captured by the Mongols of Genghis Khan, and occupied by the Japanese. Invaders destroyed cities, temples, and artifacts. Not a single wooden temple built before the 1500s still stands. However, many, such as Bulguksa, were rebuilt on their old foundations by a people who have clung tenaciously to their own heritage and identity. It's as if Korean culture had a vivid color of its own. As colors from outside were introduced into it, they toned the Korean color, but at the same time were changed by it. So the end results were special hues that are distinctly Korean. Religion provides an example. Living on this mountainous peninsula, strongly influenced by the four seasons, their earliest beliefs were in animism or shamanism, in spirits that reside in a mountain or the sea, in animals, in the sun, or in a tree. Buddhism reached them from India by way of China. Here in the famous grotto, Sokorang, built in 751 AD, sits a Buddha carved from a 10-foot slab of granite. Originally a religion without a god, Buddhism offered formulas for personal salvation through suppression of worldly desires. But as it spread, it gathered an array of protectors, saints, and saviors who could be appealed to for a better life on earth. In Korea, Buddhism was further adapted to accommodate established beliefs. Honoring Buddha, Koreans also venerate the older spirits so they won't become jealous or angry. Confucius, the Chinese sage, was another enduring influence. In Korea, the code taught by Confucius became a system of education, family behavior, and civil administration. In schools like this one, scholars memorized Confucian teachings upon which all examinations for civil offices were based. At one period, scholarship and government were so closely entwined that each government official had to write poems and present them to the king. The emphasis upon Confucianism declined, but the legacy that education is the key to future success remains deeply ingrained. So too does the emphasis upon family relationships. This older residence was the home of a master of calligraphy or brush writing. 3 generations of a family would live in the same house. Women prepared the meals here in the cooking area and had their own section of the house. The head of the family had his private quarters for work and study. Its now quiet rooms say much about what educated Koreans valued in the way of orderliness, simplicity, and harmonious arrangements. Today's urban dweller is more likely to live in a single-family apartment, one of the changes about which Mr. Lee comments.
At the present time, my country has moved rapidly toward modernization and industrialization, toward establishing a new culture. At the same time, we wish to make it harmonious with the old. So a national effort is being made to preserve, revive, restore, and nurture our own unique cultural heritage.
Visits to museums housing these national treasures are part of the children's education. And adult Koreans visit these exhibitions by the thousands. Respect for the past is expressed in many ways. Approaches to a shrine are planned with beauty and harmony in mind, helping to create the proper, respectful mood. This shrine honors Admiral Yi Sun-shin, who, in the 1590s, developed what were probably the first ironclad ships in history and defeated an invading Japanese armada. Reconstructed in 1968, the shrine has design features that are traditionally Korean. The roof ridge that curves up at both ends, and the upward curves at the corners. Influenced by the Chinese, the Korean style, in turn, influenced Japanese architecture. Places like the Hae-in-sa Temple have a special attraction for Koreans, though they may now practice Christianity, Taoism, or some other religion. Buddhism was once the state religion, and its temples and artifacts are treasures of their past. These buildings house one of the great achievements of Korean culture, the Tripitaka Koreana, all of the basic Buddhist scriptures, preserved on more than 80,000 wooden printing blocks, each hand-carved on both sides. Begun in the year 1237 as a work of piety to secure Buddha's protection against Mongol invaders, the blocks took 16 years to complete. The texts are as reproducible today as they were 700 years ago. Printing from all the blocks will fill 6,780 volumes. Printing had an early start here. Koreans were using movable type 200 years before Gutenberg developed it in the Western world. The use of metal type spread to China and Japan from here. Koreans have a language of their own. But for centuries, their writers and scholars used difficult Chinese characters with Korean pronunciation. Then, in the 15th century, King Sejong, an enlightened monarch, commissioned the development of a phonetic Korean alphabet. This alphabet, called Hangul, made reading and writing easily available to all classes. The old Chinese system used thousands of ideographs to picture what was being said. Whereas in the early form of Hangul, Koreans had to learn only 11 vowels and 17 consonants, which could be used in various combinations the way we use the letters in our alphabet. Thus, for the sound of kan, Koreans write their equivalent of K, A, N. The 3 letters, when combined, make up the sound kan. Calligraphy, or brush writing, is an art form here. It is writing and a mark of scholarship, but also something beyond mere skill and technique. Mrs. Lee Cho-kyung, principal of a girls' high school, is a master calligrapher. Her artistry is considered to have reached a quality of spiritual attainment.
영현아, 응, 이리 와. 태원이 어딨니?
네.
이리 와. 네. 할머니가 지금 이거 썼는데 이거 하나는 옛날 글이고 여기 요거는 요새 글이고 그런데 요거 봐 글자 몇 개만 가르쳐 줄게. 요거 무슨 자야?
To preserve valued legacies from the past, certain treasures receive government protection. National treasure number 20, for example, is the Tabotap, an 8th century pagoda of unique and complex design. Called the Sitting Maitreya, this gilt bronze image from the ancient period of the Three Kingdoms is national treasure number 78. Most unique to Korea are its human, cultural treasures, such as the skill of Madam Kim Hui-jin. Hers is cultural treasure number 22, meaning that her skill in the ancient art of making knots with silk thread is to be preserved.
꼬아줘야지.
Apprentices are sent to her for training in this art.
이게 꼬아줘야지. 술 길이가 일정.
The knotted threads, often supporting jade, are used as accessories in traditional costumes. Kim Pong-yong, whose skill is human cultural treasure number 10, preserves the art of manufacturing lacquerware and inlaying with mother of pearl. Between Mr. Kim and this old painting of a scholar lies an unbroken heritage. Like the old South Gate in Seoul, national treasure number 1, they are treasures that keep history from being lost in the rush of modern development. Perhaps the revered past has helped prepare Mr. Lee Sang-jin for the challenges of a new age. An age that is bringing to Korea the influence of foreign cultures. He and his fellow Koreans hope to succeed, as they have in the past, in harmonizing these new influences with their own rich heritage. Despite the hazards, if history follows its previous course, Korea will remain the land of morning calm.
Centron film, probably made by somebody who sold the footage to Centron, if I had to guess. So I've been looking through all the films that we've been scanning, and I'm surprised I haven't shown this film. It's possible I have, and it just didn't make it to the inventory of films that I've shown, but if I have shown this in the past, I think I need to show it again. This is choosing a classroom film. Enjoy.
The lens of a motion picture projector is a brilliant, penetrating eye, an eye which can cut through many barriers. On the screen, the barrier of size can be surmounted as students see microscopic subjects enlarged to the point of easy visibility. The barrier of time is circumvented as an extended process appears to be speeded up through the use of time-lapse photography, or as the past is recreated and brought vividly to life for your students. Barriers to understanding are removed as complex subjects unfold in simplified detail through the use of animation, which can diagram happenings that often cannot be seen in any other way. The eye of the motion picture projector cuts through the barrier of distance to let students observe people and places half a world away, to witness the drama while they consider the problems of our times. And finally, students can see through the use of classroom films what they need to understand as they develop their skills for the future. The lens of a motion picture projector is an eye that can help you stimulate, motivate, educate your students. But like any eye, it must be pointed in the right direction. Its wise use demands selectivity. Behind the eye, there must be a brain, your brain, making the selection, choosing the perspective that serves your goals, that implements whatever behavior changes you may want to effect in your students. Films made for the classroom have several purposes. It helps when you're choosing a film to know that there is a connection between the purpose of that film and the techniques used to achieve that purpose. Now we'll consider the first of various purposes for which classroom films are designed: to communicate information. Now, what techniques are most often employed in information films? Well, one technique, obviously, is a factual presentation, with the camera documenting actual events so that they become visual experiences. Let's look at excerpts from two films which illustrate distinctive techniques for imparting vividness and immediacy to factual material. The first film documents life in a woodlot.
In unchecked supremacy, it was the hawk that got the snake. The twist which brought death to the snake brought a reprieve to the grouse chick, but a grouse fell prey to a fox. The predator's action will pluck out the surplus, the unfit and the foolish.
In this story of life in a woodlot, the filmmaker took his camera to the scene of the action. He documented facts carefully and accurately at the moment when they occurred. In this film, students see the real thing, but Let's take a look at another excerpt from a film in which the subject matter required the substitution of an actual event for one as nearly like it as possible. This example is from a film called Children of the Wagon Train.
Everybody's interested in learning, I guess. But sometimes after a day of traveling, it's hard to keep your mind on it. We all like the part where Mrs. Crawford reads to us from the book. And I know everybody would like to be able to read from the book, too, someday. Tonight we have a real treat. Pa has shot us a prairie chicken, and we have fresh meat for supper. It sure tastes good compared to dried beef. Sometimes there's dancing and singing after supper, but today has been long, and tonight most of us are ready for bed at sundown.
In Children of the Wagon Train, historical material was reenacted in its original setting. What the students see is not the real thing. It is factual information documented as carefully and accurately as the filmmaker can recreate it. As you work to develop your skill in assessing films, remember that the characteristic of the film to communicate information is quite often the result of using the documentary technique, showing action as it occurs, or an event which has been reenacted so the student can look back into the past. The documentary technique, in its two variations, is the technique most often used in films designed primarily to communicate information. But keep in mind that there is also hardly a classroom film in existence which does not in some way impart information. Now, some of the other techniques you will see later in this film may also be used in informational films. Now, let's consider a second purpose for which films are designed: to change attitudes. Such films provide common experiences through which your students can more easily gain a new appreciation of themselves and the factors which shape their lives. Let's take a look at some screen examples. The first is from Understanding Others. It deals with a social situation.
Let's go back to the moment when Ben entered the room. Let's look at this incident again, from his viewpoint.
Are they laughing at me? I'm sure they make jokes behind my back. They think I'm odd because my clothes are old and worn, and because I have to spend all my spare time working instead of horsing around like they do. My whole life is different from theirs. I couldn't even begin to fit into their group. I wish they did like me. Maybe I could just walk over there and let them know that I want to be friendly. No, I'd better not. Why ask for trouble? That Ernie Davis, he'd probably make fun of me. Better stay away from them. Stuck-up bunch of snobs.
Before we comment on this type of attitude film, let's examine a segment from another one. A citizen participates.
We've waited quite a while and we still don't have a doctor. We need one pretty bad, and we're willing to do almost anything to get one.
It's a problem, all right. We've got over 40 applications from towns in this state that don't have doctors. We're doing everything we can to find the man, but it's a tough job.
Well, how about these young fellows coming out of the medical schools? We'd be satisfied with one of them.
Yes, most communities would like to get one of those young doctors, but there's even a problem connected with that.
The film Understanding Others presents a look at a social situation in such a way that students can easily put themselves in the place of the film participants. They can observe the facts, yes, but over and above this, well, they tend to have some feelings about those facts. Being able to identify with several different reactions helps awaken more mature student attitudes towards problems in human relations. As our screen examples illustrated, a common technique used in films to change attitudes is dramatization. It may be a dramatization in which an ideal reaction is stressed, as in A Citizen Participates, a film which helps shape attitudes by suggesting a suitable course of action. Or it may be the dramatization of a social situation which provides evidence of several different attitudes. Well, these two dramatic techniques are somewhat different, but their aims are identical: to create an atmosphere an emotionalized experience to which students can relate. A third purpose for which films are designed is to develop skills. As we observe how skill films are constructed, notice that the camera is usually focused on the work at hand, giving the student watching the film a front row seat, often the actual operator's viewpoint, from which to observe the step-by-step process without extraneous or distracting details. A clip from the film on the technique of woodworking, joining and gluing, verifies this principle of the film designed to develop skills.
Using the tri-square to guide you, extend these lines across both edges of the piece so that the dado will be straight and true. Use a marking gauge to mark the depth of the dado. This distance is usually 1/2 the thickness of the stock. Using a block guide and back saw, carefully cut the sides of the dado to the proper depth. Be sure the saw kerf lies in the waste stock, or the dado will be too large for the piece that must fit into it. Use the chisel with a mallet to remove the waste stock. Chisel from both sides, leaving the cut high in the center. Smooth the bottom of the dado with a chisel or a router. The piece should fit snugly, but not so tightly that it has to be pounded in.
In a film to develop skills, the technique most often used is one of presenting step-by-step close-ups of the process to be learned. We come now to the fourth purpose for which films are designed: to develop interest. Now, these films may impart information, they may even help change attitudes, but they are primarily designed to arouse interest. So they make use generally of interesting and unusual techniques. The film Manners in School employs fantasy plus a combination of live action and animation to arouse interest.
Larry Carson.
Yeah?
It's almost time for recess, Larry. I just wanted to remind you it's your turn to clean the chalkboard.
Oh, Miss Rand, we were gonna play ball at recess. Honest, you better get somebody else. Some girl.
I'm sorry, Larry. It's your turn. Class dismissed.
Hi, Larry. My name is Chalky.
Gosh, you can talk.
Sure. And I can walk and run and even jump.
Gosh.
Ah, that's nothing. What's important, Larry? I'm here for a purpose. To do something about your manners.
What do you mean, my manners?
The use of interest-catching devices is not limited to films designed to develop interest. But where that is the primary purpose of a film, you will often find that the use of unusual camera techniques, special music, and non-technical, sometimes even poetical narration contribute to the film's purpose. The fifth purpose for which classroom films may be designed is to raise problems. Such films are used for the specific purpose of initiating and stimulating a class discussion in an area which students can explore and analyze, if not resolve. Very often such films make use of dramatization, but they have a special technique all their own, as we shall see in this excerpt from The Snob.
Are you satisfied?
I don't know what you're talking about.
You really froze him out, didn't you?
I don't know what business it is of yours if I don't want to dance.
Well, I think you did want to dance. You wanted to dance, all right, but you just couldn't pass up the chance to be a snob.
What's the matter? Sarah? Sarah, come back.
I can't.
Why not? What's the matter?
Can I do anything?
Oh, Ron, they're so mean and hateful. They don't understand anybody who isn't one of their gang and doesn't do all the silly things they do. They don't understand.
They didn't mean it. Isn't there something I can do?
The snob, hurting everyone, herself, her parents, her friends, other people. What makes Sarah act the way she does? Is it a cover-up for some lack she feels in herself? Can a friend like Ron help her in any way? Is the group justified in judging everything Sarah does as snobbery? What do you think?
The special technique of the dramatic film designed to raise problems is the open-end technique. The unresolved situation or the unanswered question that grows out of a dramatization. Something to provoke discussion and an exchange of thoughtful opinion on problems which affect your students. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 purposes for which classroom films are designed. And you've seen examples of the close relationship between the techniques used in films and the purposes of those films. You may also have noticed some overlapping in techniques. The film to change attitudes and the film to raise problems, for example, both employed dramatization. In the one, it was a primary characteristic. In the other, it was secondary to the open-end characteristic. Now, let's return to your goals, to the behavior changes you want to effect when you show a film to your students. As you probably have already realized, your goals are often almost identical with the purposes for which the films are designed. Now here again, overlapping is common. Your primary goal may be to develop interest, although you also may want to communicate information. The point is, there is generally a great deal of flexibility in the ways you can use films. Now, some of this flexibility is the result of overlapping purposes and techniques in the films themselves. But there is even more flexibility possible in your adaptation of those films to meet your particular teaching needs. You may choose a film designed primarily to help develop a skill, such as the joining and gluing film, and emphasize some special element in it, such as asking students to watch for examples of safety practices. Now, when you do, you're using a skill film as an attitude film. Consider your students and your teaching goals to obtain clues as to how you should use any film. What you want the film to accomplish will usually determine what you ask your students to look for as they view the film. It will also suggest the type of follow-up activities which are going to be needed. You will develop your own skill in evaluating films by learning to recognize some of the film techniques we have demonstrated here. The documentary technique, the dramatic technique, the step-by-step close-up technique, the unusual effects technique, and the open-end technique. Now, each of these serve an essential purpose, but remember, too, that any one of them may serve a secondary purpose, which may be very important in relation to your teaching goals. Proper use of film heightens the importance of the teacher and makes his contribution all the more necessary. When you turn on the projector, the quality of the film experience ahead for your students should be predictable, and it can be predicted if you develop your skill in both choosing and using the classroom film.
Wow, that was phenomenal. I don't have a copy of The Snob, but I did digitize it for the Prelinger archive, and I'm going to see how quickly this is going to happen. I might be able to show it. Oh no, that's too long. Too long. Yeah. Alas. Alright, so we're going to show this film instead, which is a great film in its own right. This is part of that 21st Century series that was made by CBS, where they look to the future, and we showed a film, I believe last week, that was what future films could look like. And this one is interesting because it spans some other things. There's another film that they did called At Home 2001, which has some of the same footage as in this. And this is, I think, so incredibly relevant. Communication explosion. Because it talks about, like, wow, you know, we're improving and making rapid fire information access even better and faster and more factual. Like, what's going to happen? And guess what? We can say what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen. So watch it. Unfortunately, it's faded. I did a little bit of tweaking of the color, but it's still kind of bluish, purplish. So here it is. Features our good friend Arthur C. Clarke and Walter Cronkite. Walter Cronkite. Anyways, here's Communication Explosion. Enjoy.
Check the focus of your projector lens. This test pattern should appear sharp and clear in the center as well as in all four corners of the screen. Now adjust the volume control so that the sound can be heard in all parts of the room. Immediately following this announcement, you will see a flash and hear a beep. These should happen at the same time. If you heard the beep before you saw the flash, make the bottom loop longer. If you heard the beep after you saw the flash, make the bottom loop shorter. If your projector is set, let's try it again. Your film is now ready to be shown.
The 21st century is only a little more than 3 decades ahead of us. These newborns will be 34 years old when it dawns. In one sense, the 21st century is with us now. We are making it today. Some of our finest minds are engrossed in it. In our universities, at the great foundations, in our medical research laboratories, the world of the year 2000 is taking its first shape. Those who make the study of the future their primary concern, the futurists, are looking toward the sea, more than 70% of this planet Earth. A frontier as compelling as space, a frontier where man is not only expected to work, but to live in the 21st century. And in space, that other great frontier, what do the futurists see? They see a base on the moon. They see us exploring Mars and Venus. They see unmanned probes moving into a greater realm, the void beyond our solar system. But there may be more exciting frontiers than inner or outer space. These too will involve exploration, explorations into the very core and essence of man. The revolution in biology will have been to the last half of the 20th century what automobiles, aviation, and electronic communications were to the first half. For those who think seriously about the 21st century, the gadgets and gimmicks and much of the physical hardware are secondary. They do not see utopia, but promise with problems. Will cities still be choked? Air pollution still with us? Overpopulation threatening to smother us? And above all, will nuclear war make the 21st century an empty, unfulfilled dream? In the weeks ahead in this series, we will explore these promises and these pitfalls. Explore them with some of the men who are thinking most profoundly about the future.
With these men, we will be looking ahead at a world that lies a little more than 3 decades away. The future cannot be predicted, the experts tell us, but it can be determined if people understand and then decide what they want the world of tomorrow to be. Understand and then decide may be the key to that hazy, promising, frightening world we call the 21st century. A communications explosion has begun. From fragments of the present, we glimpse an image of the future. Many of the possibilities of 21st century communications are before us now. Which will we choose? We are creating a new world with electronics, a world in which micro-miniaturized circuits are compressing time and distance into a matter of seconds. Can instant communications end human ignorance and distrust? The communications explosion will affect us in a multitude of ways. British science and science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke believes it will even affect our telephone numbers.
I think we'll each be given a number at birth, and that'll be our telephone number for the rest of our lives. And anyone who knows that number can call us wherever we are, anywhere in the world. They won't have to know where we are even. They'll just dial that number. It'll be quite a number. It'll be about 12 digits. And our...
Not counting the area code.
Not counting the area code. Different one for Earth and Moon, of course. And they'll get us, unless, of course, we switch the thing off to get some sleep. It means that no one could ever be lost again. And there might, in an emergency, you might be able to press a button, and it would send out an SOS signal, and you'd be found. That signal would be pinpointed by another directional satellite. And just think of the thousands of lives that would save every year.
What will communications be like in the 21st century? Today, orbiting satellites like this, spinning high above the Earth, relay signals around the world. Tomorrow, satellites could be the key to a worldwide network of information, education, and entertainment. The age of the communication satellite has just begun. Three communication satellites orbiting at the same speed as the Earth rotates could link any two spots on the globe.
Going straight up. And stand by to Super. Mexico is on the line. Stand by to white to the bird and white.
In 1945, 12 years before the space age, Arthur C. Clarke offered a plan that proved to be prophetic.
As you know, I'm rather bugged on communication satellites since I've been... It's exactly 21 years ago that I wrote the basic paper on the synchronous communication satellite, so it's quite a lusty baby now. And this is going to revolutionize global communications because it's going to make the world one village. I think, was it Marshall McLuhan used the phrase, the global village? I'm looking forward with great interest to direct broadcasting from ComSats. This was really my original suggestion, broadcasting direct into the home from large communication satellites, not going through the local ground stations. This will be technically possible, certainly within 5 years. Whether it will be economically possible is another question, but it will be technically possible. And then you'll be able to tune in to Russian, Chinese, European broadcasts, TV direct, wherever you are. Well, the effect of this is going to be tremendous in both directions. It means that we can talk to the Chinese and they can talk to us, and nobody on either side can stop it. But when you look very far ahead, then you have a sort of competition between transportation and communication. As communications improve out of all recognition, so that in your own home you can have instant access through possibly ultimately all the senses, not just vision and hearing, to any remote spot on Earth, or in space for that matter, the reason for physical transportation will diminish, except purely for pleasure. And I can see a great decline, almost to the vanishing point, in business transportation, and a great increase in pleasure transportation, because of this communication effect.
Communications equipment like this could connect tomorrow's home with the world through electronics. In the 21st century, what will it mean if we choose to communicate rather than commute? Will cities become obsolete? Will a home be a school as well? This reporter visited a mock-up of a room conceived by Philco Ford and designed by Paul McCobb. News and information from anywhere could be received over the equipment here, and outgoing messages could be beamed to any spot on the globe. Now, with this console, we might be connected to a worldwide library system to get text or pictures from any book of any age. You could telephone with this telephone to a library somewhere in the world, and then simple push of the button, and there, information about the past or the future. Now, this room is also a school. Every subject from astrophysics to English might be taught to the children of the 21st century at home. What if I want to know the flight plan for a 21st century trip to Mars? Well, this console can show it to me. And if I want a permanent copy of it, I just ask the machine. And it comes out right there. Lessons and homework in this Communications Learning Center are done here. The teacher is a computer. Daily charts plot a student's progress in each of his courses. This typewriter can be used to ask or answer questions. Pre-programmed lessons appear on this screen. To answer, I touch the screen with this electronic pointer. Find out I'm wrong, just like high school. So I try again. This time I'll select C here. And I find out I'm right, and an explanation of what a fuel cell is. Without leaving a communications learning center like this, you could get an education, get the news, be entertained.
And all this equipment is possible today. There is one major problem. How will we send and receive this new flood of information? When we communicate, waves of varying frequencies carry our messages. The higher the frequency, the more message information a wave can carry. Thousands of frequencies make up our communications network. By the 21st century, this network could become overloaded. One answer, compress the transmission. One way to do this with telephone calls is to reduce the signal to its essentials. First, unnecessary portions of the transmission are removed. Next, the signals are squeezed to take up less space on the telephone line. Now, 7 times as many messages can be sent at once. A squeezed message sounds like this. At the other end, the message is unsqueezed, and the sound becomes understandable again.
I'll be phoning you again in a few days. Look, Wilson, I'll be phoning you again in a few days.
Another answer is even higher frequencies that carry progressively more information. This brings us into the frequencies at which light is transmitted. Normal light is a jumble of high-frequency waves. It is not intense enough to carry communications very far. A new light, the laser, consists of orderly, coherent waves that travel in an intense beam. Because of light's high frequency, 250 million telephone calls could theoretically be carried by one laser beam. Today, short-range communications are carried on invisible laser beams.
Do you want me to clear the barges out there so you can come out without a tug?
Definitely at least 10 feet in there because they said you'll only get a bucket in each bow pocket.
Righto. Take the two of them away and get up on the bow and put a line up.
At least 10 feet.
Despite breakthroughs like the laser, future communications could still be crowded. John R. Pierce of the Bell Telephone Laboratories.
I think that communication, even of mass communication, will to some degree outgrow the airwaves eventually, and we will have more and more of it by wire or by millimeter waves going through hollow tubes called waveguides, or through laser beams, which can carry ultimately tremendous amounts of communication, but which will have to be protected also from the weather, probably, so they too would go through pipes. I think that ultimately a large fraction of things, even things that now ordinarily go by radio, will perhaps have to go by some guided means.
Lasers not only carry sound, they make startlingly real 3-dimensional pictures. This image was created by Professor Emmett Leith at the University of Michigan. He used a revolutionary new kind of photography with lasers. It is called holography. Holography uses no camera, no lens, no shutter. 2 laser beams are used. Imagine a triangle. At the apex, two laser beams. In one corner, an object to be photographed. In the other, a photographic plate. One laser beam shines directly on the plate. The other bounces off the object and then hits the plate. When the two beams strike the photographic plate, their waves meet like crossing ripples from two stones tossed in a pond. The result is this smudge-like pattern. This is called a hologram. To unlock a holographic image, a fresh laser is beamed through the plate. The plate becomes a window beyond which an eerie three-dimensional image floats in space. Holography using three different colored lasers produces a three-dimensional image in full color. Something like holography might be the key to full-color, three-dimensional television. In the 21st century, television may also provide us with permanent copies of what we've seen. This reporter spoke with business consultant and computer expert John Diebold about what could be a revolution in publishing.
You can think in terms of worldwide publishers, and you may very well end up with an international newspaper being able to be transmitted this way.
In other words, if you watch the CBS Evening News on television, you'd also get a printed version of it.
Yes, of the news. And I think the interesting thing there is that today when we think about that, we think of having the New York Times come out of the TV set. But of course what will happen is that we'll have something which is new. You may edit your own newspaper. You may set into the TV the fact that you're interested in lots of business news and only a minimum amount of sports, or you want all the book reviews and nothing about the stock market, or your own little profile of interest with a smattering of general news but a great deal about local political events. And this is what will be printed out. And no one knows at this point, but I think the one thing that is clear is it won't be what we do today. You won't print this morning's New York Times out of the television set when you can. You'll have a hybrid medium. You'll have something between TV and print. We'll have 3D color pictures on the screen, and we'll have lithographic quality in the printout, but it will be, in editorial terms, it'll be in a medium. And the ability to have a dialogue between the man and the machine is increasing every day. Each day that goes by, each day that we draw closer to the turn of the century, we start having an easier ability to deal with the machine. The technicians call this the man-machine interface, but the ability to communicate with the machine becomes easier.
MIT professor Joseph Weizenbaum carries on a dialogue with a computer through a typewriter. A computer can play many roles depending upon how it's programmed.
I have told the computer that it's to understand what I'm saying, say in the context of being a doctor. If I then tell the computer, for example, my head hurts, I expect the computer to respond to that as a doctor might. And the computer responds by saying, tell me more about your pains in general, which is a quite reasonable response for a doctor to give. Well, suppose I say, my toe hurts too. It says, you see some psychological reason why your toe should pain you, and this tells us something about the kind of a doctor we may be talking to. That is, the context that we've specified for the computer to be in. Well, suppose I say, no, I don't. It says, don't you really? So apparently it's suggesting that perhaps I do in fact see some reason why these two phenomena should be connected, and so on. Now, suppose now I ask the computer, now in this context, some question, or say some simple arithmetic question. For example, how much is 2 and 2? Now, that's not a reasonable thing to ask a doctor when you're visiting him in his office, and the doctor, or the computer in this context, now comes back and says, why do you ask? Suppose I say, because I want to know. And the response is that the real reason? Well, I think in general we see here that in a certain sense the computer insists on remaining in this particular context and in effect in understanding what we say to it in that context. And the computer's been instructed to be polite so that, for example, if I say to it, thank you, then this is a clue to it that, I'm finished with it, and it comes back with, you're quite welcome, come again.
The next step toward bringing men and machines closer together is turning typing into talking. Some computers have learned to talk with borrowed voices. This man is calling up a computer. He wants to check a bank balance. He asks his question with a punched computer card. The computer will answer with words previously recorded by a human voice. It assembles these words into the appropriate sentences.
Account number 01834318849. Balance is 1,088.52.
Computers may make cash and checks unnecessary in the 21st century. To buy something, you just need a punched card in your pocket and a talking computer in your bank. The Bank of Delaware in Wilmington is experimenting with such a service. When you want to pay, the clerk calls the bank's computer. The punched card identifies your account. The talking computer verifies your credit.
Account number 01-92962062008. Balance on this account is good.
The purchase amount is automatically transferred to the store's account. In the 21st century, when men and machines have learned to communicate easily, your best friend might be a computer. It would not speak with a borrowed human voice. It would speak with a computer voice of its own that sounds like this.
To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of...
What good is a friend that talks to you if you can't talk to him?
Once upon a time, 1789 to be precise.
How can we get a computer to understand what we say to it so that we can really talk to a machine? The first step is to make a picture of the human voice called a spectrogram. Spectrographic information is given to a computer so that it can recognize word sounds. Now a typewriter will type what we tell it. Today, this conversation is limited to numbers and simple words.
0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, 1, 2.
To give a computer a voice of its own, you again begin with a spectrogram. The spectrographic information is translated into the usual punch tape that a computer understands. And then combined with a machine that makes sounds, the computer is ready to speak in its own voice. Dr. Peter Denish at Bell Labs shows how it's done.
What we have here is an electronic speech sound generator. When we want to hear a sentence, I type the sentence into the computer. The computer sends this information to the sound generator, and then we can hear the sounds produced by this sound generator. Unfortunately, the program can't spell yet, so instead of typing the sentence in normal orthographic spelling, I'll use a simplified phonetic spelling. I'll type in the sentence, I see the cat.
I see cat. I see cat. I see cat. I see cat.
I'm sorry, this time. In fact, I have to type in, I saw the cat. And here is the sentence.
I saw the cat. I saw the cat.
If I want to change this rather neutral sounding sentence into one with some stress,
I'll tell the computer program where to stress the sentence by typing a $sign in the appropriate syllable. So now, if I want to hear the sentence, I saw the cat, I'll type this. Listen to it now. Here you see displayed the pitch curve. That is, the sound you will hear will vary in pitch the way this curve shows. Listen to the sound.
Ice. Ice.
What you hear is the word ice.
Ice.
I can have a reach into the computer and change the curve on this screen and also the corresponding sound you hear. For example,
The pattern of future communications cannot be predicted with certainty. One thing is certain. Technology alone will not bring about human understanding. Henry David Thoreau once wrote, "We are in such great haste to construct a magnetic telegraph from Maine to Texas. But Maine and Texas, it may be, have nothing to communicate." In the 21st century, when the world stands listening, what will it hear? It will not be enough to produce the weird, unhuman voice of a computer.
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer too. I'm half crazy, all for the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage.
In the 21st century will be an instant contact with the world. What will we say to the world?
The 21st Century was filmed and edited under the supervision and control of CBS News.
Wow, sorry we ran a little long, but the film was awesome. Yeah, so it was part of that series, 21st Century, and I believe this was the first one in the series. And this was televised. Late 60s, probably 68, 69. I didn't get a chance to see the copyright date, but man, this film was great. And we have so much hindsight as far as what technologies took off, which ones were kind of meh, and what came true and what did not come true. And certainly having all this amazing access to information has not resulted in what we thought would happen. The amount of misinformation has actually grown exponentially. So the signal to noise ratio, the noise ratio is very high to the signal ratio, and some people don't know how to filter out the noise, and that is a problem. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks for joining me today. If you like what you saw, hit the thumbs up button. Even if you've done it recently, please do it again. That YouTube seems to like that. The YouTube monster satellite that is rotating around the Earth and dictating everything that we do seems to like when you hit a thumbs up button or a like button or when you subscribe. They gave me this token, this silver token, which is a reward for people that have subscribed to my channel. You can also go to ko-fi.com/avgeeks. You can go to patreon.com/avgeeks, and those are ways to contribute. So we can buy things like old wood handle screwdrivers. Likewise, you can use the super thanks button in the YouTube chat, and you can also go to other videos that we have on our channel and watch, and we will get pennies of advertising money when you do that. So thanks again for tuning in today. Man, a lot to think about that film. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow on Friday. Take care.